Hello, my name is Kirsten Serena. I am a head of product at Findmypast, and thanks to the folks at UserPilot, courtesy of the Product Drive Conference, I'm here to talk to you about a popular subject in product leadership circles, the art of stakeholder management. Okay, you may be wondering who is and what do we do at Findmypast? If you don't know us yet, we are a small firm based in London, Dundee, Salt Lake City, Boston Spa, and Dublin. We help people discover, build, and share their family history. Our mission is to help everyone discover and celebrate how they're uniquely connected so that people can learn about their past to better direct their future. That is to say, we believe that life should be understood backwards but lived forwards. It's an ethos that is brought to life through unmatched data and services, helping our members make rich family history discoveries they won't find anywhere else, and then helping them to build that knowledge through things like their family tree, as you see here, and then share that information with their family and friends. We do this through lots of different functional areas and expertise, not just product, but also designers, engineers, the DNA team, infrastructure, analytics, user research, copywriters, the content team, marketers, investors, HR, archivists, so many great historians, and so many more different partners. And we have 4 key values in how we approach our work. We want to honor history. We want to stay curious, learn and experiment. We want to be human, treat our customers and colleagues with respect. And we want to create magic. And it's part of the way in which we currently create magic through our stakeholder relationships that I would like to talk about today. So that's moving from a top-down style, old approach to managing stakeholders to a more self-directed, cross-functional collaboration. Okay, so why am I talking about stakeholder management? Well, if like me, you're drawn to product because you like taking ideas, making them real, and ultimately creating those rocket ships that can take customers to the moon with the magic of something like a moonwalk, then you're going to be working with a lot of different functional areas and a lot of different expertise. And stakeholder management done well is key to making this work. Also, having 23 years of experience at a lot of well-known brands, building products for folks like UBS, Credit Suisse, Barclays, Amazon, retail, logistics, and now to mass media at Findmypast, I have a lot of hard-won learnings that I would like to share. In particular, I think it's really important to be sharing some of those learnings with a wide audience. I think it helps attract new people to the product management profession, and it helps people from diverse educational or career paths understand how to make their way in product, and ultimately in helping create a stronger and richer profession. This helps us all. Okay, so the old way of doing stakeholder management. For many of the different products I've seen, going from this old way to the new way is probably the greatest key factor of difference between the different scales of customer impact those products and product teams that I've led have had. That old way of thinking is more top-down, inefficient, very, very time-consuming and taxing on the PM, and it's more about managing stakeholder opinions really than listening to those folks. The new way I would call cross-functional collaboration or leadership. And that's a lot more about empowering those different specialties to come together with or as part of the product team. Ultimately, it's much more effective. It's also a much faster way to get to customer impact. And frankly, for everybody involved, it's a lot more fun. Okay, so I have used the word stakeholder quite a bit. What do I mean? Well, a stakeholder is a member of groups without whose support, and that's quite critical. It's not just their attention, it's their support. A company or product ceases to exist. This term, I think, first came about in 1963, used in a memorandum, I believe, at Stanford Research Institute. And frankly, every couple of years it's been changing how that's interpreted and who people are talking about when they talk about stakeholders. At the moment, today, in product teams and for the purposes of this discussion, I'm talking not just about design and engineering, but ultimately all of the other employees or specialties that help make a product successful and possible. So the company owners, the founders, management and leaders, the investors, in many cases the government's involved, and ultimately the customers themselves. In various different ways, all of these stakeholders are key to making that company or product successful. Okay, so what is this old style of stakeholder management that I keep referring to? Especially if you're new to product or a little younger, you might not know what I'm talking about. So back when I started my career and was very much like this naive little bird on the left, back when, yes, dinosaurs ruled the earth, it was a very long time ago, stakeholder management was pretty much done, as you can see in this central diagram here. You would very formally identify your stakeholders, understand their engagement, perform different types of stakeholder analysis, put them in graphs and charts, structure how you would engage those stakeholders, make an agreement together, abide by the agreement, and then magically this was somehow supposed to lead to a satisfied stakeholder or representative of a stakeholder group. Having started my career in investment banking and going to quite a few of my early stakeholder reviews, I would say, well, then it went a bit like this. And frankly, that night is faring far better than I did in many of my early stakeholder reviews. They were not pleasant. These top-down, often telling the stakeholder what to think, driving them towards a goal, often formed without their input. Pretty exhausting for the management, the leader, the product manager. Frankly, pretty exhausting for the dragon. And for everybody involved. But a lot of us ploughed on accepting this as the normal part of leadership, product management at that time, that this was how these stakeholder relationships were supposed to be done. And we would just keep going and hope for a better outcome next time. It frankly never came through that method. So before I start then talking about the new way and some of the steps you can make changes from that old style to the new way, I would stop for a moment of reflection and ask you, where are you today in your own product career or as a leader of other product managers? The reason I am forcibly taking this moment of reflection is I know how hard it is to get. In product, you're in the middle of so many different specialties and crisis and critical decisions that you can find yourself mostly in a reactive mode. And it's very hard to step out of that, taking the right time for your customers, building the right relationships, and moving more to that proactive mode. So I would say just take a moment and ask yourself, for your average day right now, how do you feel about your stakeholder relationships? Are you like this on a calm, sunny lake, leading a very collaborative, calm sailing rowing team from one successful win to the next for your customers? Or would you say that you're more the captain of the boat where frankly you're not really sure where the team is or what they're doing, and you're navigating stormy seas from one crisis to the next, hoping to stumble across great impact for your customers? Before we go any further, especially to the new product managers or out there or people new to our profession, I would like to say it's very normal to have both kinds of days, no matter how much experience you have. But the key decision or the key reflection I'm looking for here is, do you find yourself mostly facing these storms? If you do, I think a lot of the steps I'm going to share next will help you transform some of those key stakeholder relationships so that you can change to a much more collaborative, cross-functional style of working, you'll find yourself more on the left. Okay, so I've mentioned a few times the term cross-functional team. What do I mean by a cross-functional team? Well, it is a group of people from different functional areas or expertise working towards a common goal, or as we like to say at Findmypast, making magic together. The new empowered product team is often encouraging the designers, the engineers, and the product manager to work in this way, to empower each other, to listen to each other, to form that goal together. We often don't think about taking that same dynamic and applying it to other teams and expertise and stakeholders. And from what I have seen, and hope you find the same, it's when you take that same style of working and approach more of your stakeholders in that way, that the real magic starts to happen, and that together you can actually deliver a lot more for your customer. Okay, so how do we make this happen? How do we take those relationships and make them much more cross-functional, collaborative in nature? The first thing I would say is that you need to think from the start about how you're going to be building these relationships. You need to think about the fact that these folks are not just role profiles, they're real people. Just like you're not your product, you're a real person. You need to get to know them. You need to get a coffee with them, get a drink, have lunch, whatever it is that works for them, make the time. And timing for this itself matters. It's a lot easier to build relationships in peacetime when you aren't facing a problem together. You might think, actually, I could save some time here, not spend, so much building these relationships. But if you then try to come back in wartime or challenges or later down the line when things are a bit calmer, you'll find that you probably need to spend, and I would say this is an average, about 10 times the amount of time trying to build those relationships when you or the product are in trouble or there's a crisis. The other thing I would suggest when you're thinking about building these relationships and you're hopefully making the right choice to do it early on in the right way, also think about the cultural context of what you're doing. Having worked in investment banking for quite some time, transactional short-term relationships may be accepted in places like New York. But if you're working with people in different places or countries, you may find that not only is it unwelcome, but they will actively reject such relationship building. So the way in which you do that relationship building is really critical. Also, again, I would recommend a moment of reflection here for yourself. Think about the way in which you've built relationships with different functional areas over time. And if you're leading other product managers, think about the way in which they have. Do they have blind spots in how they build certain types of functional relationships? And if they do, I have seen, for example, quite a few folks struggle with founders or investors. I would suggest getting into that blind spot and fixing it before trying to build a critical relationship. Get to understand that area, get to understand that craft. Maybe try it as a side project or something like that to understand it more, especially if you haven't done that particular job in the past, especially if you've, say, come straight into product. You can also get a mentor or ask for a guide, someone who's really good at building relationships with that skill set or the skill set itself, and ask them for advice on how to work better with that functional area. Okay. Secondly, in managing product teams, I've noticed this is a large blocker for many product managers out there. And that's in respecting other career paths and functional areas. This is probably because it is so hard for many people to enter the product profession that sometimes we forget it's not the only career path out there. And it's not the only way in which people can contribute to creating those moonwalks for customers or building those rockets. There are plenty of other career paths out there. Investing, government affairs, user research, analytics, design, marketing, software engineering, sales. And this may come as a surprise to some product managers, but their career goal, ambition, and aspirations are very different. They've gone into those areas most of the time because that's what they prefer to do, and that's how they want to enable the moonwalk for customers. That's what they want to be great at. So be very careful when you're talking about or evaluating opinions. You don't want to come across as having prejudice in this area, particularly if you're the product manager. You need to understand and respect those other parts to contribute to the product. Now, when you can do this, you will find yourself very, very quickly going from not just cross-functional partner to cross-functional leader, and together delivering a lot more value for the customers. Okay, so how do you get to understand those crafts in more depth? How do you, as a generalist, now that you're building those relationships and you're listening to those other expertise, how do you actually genuinely engage with them on the goal, especially if you haven't done these other functional areas yourself? So here's a few common functions you may be working with: design, marketing, engineering, investment. And you'll find as you build more products and more complex products and lead more teams, you'll be working with more specialties. The key difference is that they prioritize and value different things, different aspects of the product that you're trying to build. They have different skills they're trying to master. A designer may be strengthening their ability to create intuitive designs or working on more consistent designs. A marketer may be working with a new channel for the first time and making choices around what's the best to do with costs in terms of reach. The engineer may be working for the first time on reliable and resilient systems. They may be working for the first time on making systems faster. The investor may be thinking about where this particular product sits in their overall portfolio and what returns they need to be able to hold on to it over a certain period of time, or what payback they need. A lot of these different challenges and different skills you need to be able to engage with as a good cross-functional leader. The critical difference here, the key nuance, is you do not need to have done these roles or need to be able to do these tasks, but you need to engage well with the experts that are doing these. You need to be able to have trade-off discussions with them, and you need to be able to hear when they're making suggestions on one particular path or another. Okay, so let's say you are now building your relationships, you are now respecting teams and opinions outside product, you're learning more about their craft and the choices they need to make to truly understand their expertise and help bring that expertise into the product. So how do you make sure you don't end up as a bottleneck between all communication, as the key translator for all these specialty areas in never-ending meetings, which is kind of what happens in the old stakeholder management approach? I.e., how do you channel that cross-functional expertise not just into the product in a way you understand, but in a way those other areas can understand each other? As on the screen, my best learning in this area is pictures. Picture tells 1,000 words, and that's because pictures break down communication and expertise silos. Pictures help people visualize the end goal, visualize what you're trying to do for the customer. In this case, building a rocket. Explaining what a rocket is not going to mean much, but when you actually have a real prototype to look at, yes, you do get very engaged stakeholders as per the picture. Okay, as an example here, so we were working on a new driver app workflow at one point, really complicated. We spent 6 months probably, and that's probably an underestimate, for all departments in high-level strategy talks, and at the end of it, no real change. At the end of one of these meetings, we made a whiteboard mock quickly and got 2 key pieces of feedback. About another week or 2 later, a high-fidelity UI was presented and then could be shared between the stakeholders. So there was a document artifact that could be forwarded on without having to wait for a meeting with product, where those teams could talk to each other. We got about 10 pieces of key feedback. And then we took that paper prototype and actually tried a field trial with customers. And at that point, we got more change than we could actually count. We got 100 pieces of change. The ability to visualize something, then the ability to see it in a more real-world perspective made a drastic difference to the engagement and the quality of engagement across the functional areas. It may seem like overhead, but the ability to get documents and artifacts circulating, and particularly with visuals, makes a significant difference in the way in which the team is able to collaborate, decentralize decision-making, work in a self-directed way, or question a goal, whether they're working towards a goal, questioning the goal, and ultimately deliver better impact for the customer. Okay, I am not going to say that this is without its challenges. When you have different specialties finally coming together, building that rocket, helping each other, you will hit situations, no matter how much time you spend building the relationship from the beginning, taking the time to listen and respect each other, learning about the craft that they are responsible for to help them deliver that with the greatest level of mastery possible, and creating documents and artifacts that can be circulated without needing you in the room every minute, and ideally emphasizing the visuals. You will still get situations where these expertise will disagree, even with the goal and with each other. So what do you do? Ultimately, at this point, the thing that I have seen is best for those relationships in the long term is to turn to the customer. Run experiments, get the data. Transparency in the relationship is key, because you will find out in this situation, some people are right and some people are wrong. Ultimately, that customer is going to solve those expertise clashes or those gut feel questions. But when you do find that answer, it's really important to the long-term relationship here that you share it transparently. The learnings and what you find, and to some degree, whose gut feel was right and whose gut feel was wrong, needs to be shared. But also, not just those learnings. The successes need to be shared. Those relationships need to be reinvested in. And at this point, I would recommend things like random acts of appreciation across functional areas. When you know someone went above and beyond to get feedback on a design, or went above and beyond to get funding at a certain time, you need to recognize that contribution. And that's going to encourage more and more cross-functional collaboration as you go forward. And you're going to move much more quickly from cross-functional partner to cross-functional leader with very, very different stakeholder relationships. Okay. And hopefully, if you apply some of these painfully won learnings that I myself am getting better at as the years go by, I think you will find the ability to deliver some of those amazing moments for customers and frankly for humanity, like a moonwalk, are going to be much more within your grasp on a much more regular basis. Okay, so to recap, I am saying don't try to manage your stakeholder relationships. Instead, empower those same cross-functional collaborators with you to be a more self-directed nature of engagement. And take these steps to make that happen. Magic step number 1, build your cross-functional relationships early. Respect the other functions that are contributing towards this goal for the product, for the customer, for the company. Learn at least the basics about these crafts, especially if you haven't done the role yourself. Try it, get a mentor, get someone to guide you if you're stuck. Share your document artifacts early, and where possible, make sure it's with visuals. Share the outcomes and the learnings from this work. In particular, customer data is going to solve any expertise or gut feel clash you may still experience between your cross-functional partners. Okay, so I want to say thank you very much. Before we go though, at Findmypast, we would love your product feedback in return. So if you check out this link, this top link here, you can actually get a 14-day free trial of our product. And I would love to know what you think and any issues you hit along the way. And best of all, you may learn something about your family's history, your identity, and you may even find members of your extended family. Well, I hope you do. And if you've also found the way in which we describe the way we work at Findmypast and these products interesting, also definitely check out our careers page. Despite the lockdown, we are hiring in a lot of functional areas right now. Thank you very, very much. Thank you to all of the folks at User Pilot for this great conference. Make sure they know how much you love Product Drive. And thank you for your time today to listen to these ideas about moving stakeholder management to more of a cross-functional partnership and leadership dynamic.